guess the screen is visible now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So yesterday, or the last class rather, I should say, that we were started talking about adsorption. And I had told you that adsorption is essentially the first step to a catalytic process. And that is why we need to study a bit of adsorption in our heterogeneous catalysis or the heterogeneous reaction classes. Now, if you remember, I had told you that the species that get adsorbed, let me just see if I can get my pointer. The species that tends to get adsorbed is known as the adsorbate, and the one on which the bulk material on which it gets adsorbed, that is your adsorbent. So I had told you that adsorption, essentially the process happens on the active sites, which could be present on the external surface as well as in, the internal pores of the catalyst. But what happens is that the external surface, the surface area is so small compared to the total surface area of the internal pores that we often tend to neglect this external surface. So suppose we have a spherical catalyst, and if my surface area, say 500 meters square per gram, you will see that the internal pores will occupy 99.99% of that, and the rest of it will be just on the external surface. So there are molecular forces which are associated with the adsorbent molecules in the bulk of the adsorbent, and then they see what happens is that these molecular forces which are there inside in the bulk, if you just look at these four, say, bonds which are there, these are all saturated because they're equally covered or surrounded by same kind of molecules on both sides. So they're equally, they have a relation, these bonds have a relationship, the molecular forces are balanced on all the different sides. But if you look at the surface ones, they are balanced only on the inside and the side. The top ones are unbalanced. So that is why this adsorption process which is there essentially takes place on the top surface. These unbalanced molecular forces on the adsorbent surface, they create an attractive force for the adsorbent molecules approaching the surface. And if you remember, I had told you that there are two kinds of adsorption that was involved. One was physisorption and one was chemisorption. And we had talked about the differences between the two of these, physisorption and chemisorption. I'm not going to go through them again. And we had also seen thermodynamically why adsorption processes are usually exothermic, and it's and only the case of dissociative chemisorption do we sometimes have an endothermic process. And then we went on to talk about these adsorption isotherms, and the first isotherm that we talked about was the Langmuir adsorption isotherm. And in the Langmuir adsorption isotherm, there are certain assumptions that we had made, which was important, that the entire surface is energetically uniform. That means each site has got the same energy or the same amount of unbalanced forces. There is no interaction between the adsorbed molecules. Two molecules which are adsorbed on two different sites do not have any interaction between each other. And the mechanism by which this adsorption happens are essentially identical, and each adsorbed complex has the same structure. And the extent of adsorption is less than one complete monolayer. At the most, it can go up to a monolayer. That means all the sites are covered on the surface, and the heat of adsorption is constant with surface coverage. It does not change as the surface coverage. Even if one site is occupied, whatever the heat of adsorption is there, and if the 99% of the sites are occupied, you'll have the same amount of surface coverage which is there. The heat of adsorption is the same. And we had looked at the mathematical expressions for this, and we had seen that how we can look at the rate of attachment and the rate of detachment, and at equilibrium we say that the net rate of adsorption is equal to 0. That means the rate of attachment becomes equal to the rate of detachment, and this essentially gives us the final form of the Langmuir isotherm, which says that theta is equal to sorry, KAPA divided by 1 plus KAPA, where Ka is my adsorption equilibrium constant. Remember, the adsorption equilibrium constant is always written with a capital letter, and the kinetic constants are usually written with small letters. And this is the last slide that we had worked on last class. And if I take that, instead of writing theta, if I write it as V by Vm, that means the volume of gas adsorbed by the total volume of gas adsorbed at monolayer, this is equal to KAPA by 1 plus KAPA. Now we try to rearrange this expression to form a linear expression. That means we can write it in the form of a straight line. And we see that if PA by V is plotted versus the partial pressure, then we are supposed to get a straight line with a slope equal to 1 by M and the intercept equal to 1 by Ka into Vm. Now, why is this straight line part important? Because when we carry out an actual experiment, adsorption experiment in the laboratory, we get some data where we know the partial pressure of the gas which is getting adsorbed and what is the volume of the gas absorbed. Now, if I plot my PA versus V from the experimental data versus the partial pressure of A, and if I get a straight line, then I can say that yes, the gas follows the Langmuir isotherm, and I can find out the values of Vm and K from the intercept and the slope. Now, this is the Langmuir isotherm written in terms of partial pressure. Now, if I want to write the Langmuir isotherm in terms of concentration, so what do I have? Now, in terms of concentration, when we write the rate of adsorption, the units are mole per second per gram catalyst. And what is it that we are writing? We write Kc into Cg, where Cg is the concentration of the adsorbed gas. This is the concentration of the adsorbed gas multiplied by Cm bar minus C bar. What is Cm bar? Cm bar is the concentration corresponding to complete monolayer of molecules, something which was equal to the Vm value when we are talking about in terms of volumes and partial pressures. So that is my Cm bar, and C bar is the concentration of the adsorbed species, or analogously we can talk about that this is the value which is similar to V. So if I just take back one slide and see that this was my rate of attachment and this was the rate of detachment in terms of when we're talking in terms of partial pressures and concentration of adsorbed species. Now we are writing it in terms of concentrations, and then we see that this is my rate of the adsorption in terms of concentrations. This is the concentration of the gas molecule, and the difference between the concentration at monolayer, concentration corresponding to complete monolayer, and this is the concentration of any adsorbed species. And what is the rate of desorption? The rate of desorption is given by the kinetics of the constant for desorption multiplied by C bar, that is the concentration of the adsorbed species. Obviously, because adsorption can only, the desorption can only happen from the adsorbed species. So the concentration of adsorbed species is involved out here. So at equilibrium, these two rates are equal. That means Kc Cg into Cm bar minus C bar is equal to Kc prime by C bar into C bar, sorry. Now, what is the values which are Cm bar? Again, the unknown value which is happening at, which has got a variable value, is the C bar. So if I want to find out the concentration of C bar, what I do is what I had done last time, that I multiply all these terms. That means Kc Cg into Cm bar minus Kc Cg into C bar is equal to Kc prime into C bar. And if I write the C bar, this is equal to Kc into Cg into Cm bar divided by 1 plus Kc Cg. So this is, now you find this similar, and we compare this with the expression we had developed for the partial pressure. Now C bar, again, let us look at it. What is it? It is the concentration of the adsorbed species. If I divide this by the Cm bar, which is the concentration at complete monolayer, this ratio essentially becomes my surface coverage, or theta. So surface coverage of theta is now equal to Kc into Cg divided by 1 plus Kc into Cg. So if you compare this with this particular term, you'll see that the adsorption constant is was Ka before. Now in terms of concentration, we can write it as Kc. And instead of partial pressure, we now have the concentration of the adsorbed gas, which is given as Cg. Similar to the previous situation, I can linearize this. And if I linearize this, what will I get? Cg by C bar is equal to 1 by Kc into Cm bar plus 1 by Cm bar into Cg. And if I plot Cg by C bar, which is my y in an equation of y is equal to mx plus c, and x is Cg. So if I plot Cg by C bar versus Cg, I will get my 1 by Cm bar as my intercept, sorry, as my slope, and 1 by Kc into Cm bar as my intercept. So if I have, instead of having the constant value, experimental values are not in terms of partial pressures, and it is in terms of concentrations, then instead of using this particular expression, I will use this particular expression. If you look at the calculations or the problems which are given in Smith, the end of the chapter problems, etc., you will see that several problems are given in terms of concentration rather than partial pressure. That is why I showed you that this is nothing different. It just depends on how you want to express it. And if it is given in terms of concentration, then this is the linear equation that we are going to use during our calculations, etc., in order to find out what is the concentration at complete monolayer and what is the adsorption constant in terms of concentration. Now the question is that what are the limitations of the Langmuir isotherm? Now, when we talk about limitations of Langmuir isotherm, what we are talking about is essentially that does Langmuir isotherm fit all possible cases? That means all kinds of adsorption. Can the Langmuir isotherm represent each one of them? It has been seen that that is not the case. Langmuir isotherm cannot represent all possible situations because the assumption that the catalyst surface is essentially homogeneous. That means every site has got the same energy. They have the same probability of forming and having adsorption happen on top of them. Then the fact that once they are adsorbed, the complexes are identical. All of this is not essentially true. In reality, a catalyst surface is non-homogeneous in nature. So when the catalyst surface is non-homogeneous, what happens is that the atoms at the crystal edges and crystal corners are the most unsaturated, and adsorption energies are greater at these sites than in the middle of the surface. So what are we talking about? Suppose I have a crystal like this, it's a cubical kind of thing. So if I compare the sites which are at these corners, or at the edges, that means on these sides, their energies will be different from a site which is at the center or in the middle of the surface. So these two sites will not be energetically uniform. This has been seen from experiments, etc. So our assumption that everything is homogeneous is not essentially correct. And that is why Langmuir doesn't work everywhere. And there are interactions between molecules which are close to one another on the surface. So suppose there's an adsorbed species out here. There's an adsorbed species out here. So we're getting A adsorbed on this species. And there's an A adsorbed out here. We are saying that these two does not interact with each other. But in reality, we see that if these two species are close enough, their molecular forces do have an effect on each other. And that means there is an interaction between the two of them. Now here I have asked you to do a small assignment which I will upload today after class, and you can submit it by tomorrow morning. It's a small thing, nothing, no big deal to do it if you understood what I have done in the previous class and which I've already uploaded on YouTube. You will see that when we are talking about the adsorption of a single species in terms of the Langmuir isotherm, what did we say? That this was equal to, once again, let me go back here, theta is equal to KAPA by 1 plus KAPA. So here what we did is only one species which is involved, which is A, and that is getting adsorbed, and this is the surface coverage. Now suppose we have more than one species getting adsorbed. And so the summation of the surface coverages is equal to a summation of KIPI, where I is each of the species, and divided by 1 plus summation KIPI. So this is something that you have to show that when more than one species is adsorbed, then this is the expression of the Langmuir isotherm that we come up with. So I've given you a small hint as to how to start off. I said, let's imagine we are adsorbing 3 species, A, B, and C. So for each of these species, you can write a balance like this, that is KAPA into CV, if you remember, was equal to K minus A into CA dot S. So instead of CV, that means the number of vacant sites, we write it as total sites minus the adsorbed species. Because there are more than one adsorbed species out here, for one it is CAS, for the second species it is CBS, and for the third species it is CCS. Then what happens is that my CV can be written in terms of CT minus CAS minus CBS minus CCS. And then you can divide your Ka by K minus A to get capital Ka. And then you can have an expression for theta A. Similarly, you can have an expression for theta B when you're considering the second adsorbed species. And you can have a concentration for theta, in the case of the third adsorbed species, the surface coverage in terms of that is theta C, can also be found out. Then you sum it up, that is add up theta A, theta B, and theta C, and see if you can come up with a general expression like this. It's very similar to the way it is done for one species. So do it for one species and the second species and the third species, and then add them up and then write up this general expression that is there. So you can do that simply. I'll upload it as an assignment, and we will discuss this in our tutorial class tomorrow, and the previous assignment too. Now what we see is that when we have experimental equilibrium adsorption data, I had told you what is experimental adsorption data, that when we have theta versus Pa. Now let me just go back and remind you. For, say for example, when we had a Langmuir isotherm, in the case of a Langmuir isotherm, we had seen that when we have theta versus partial pressure plotted, we have a straight line. That means there's a linear increase for some time, after which it becomes flat. And I had shown you why is that possible, that at low values of low values of partial pressure, at low partial pressure values, this term is small. So the expression becomes theta is equal to Ka Pa. So there is a linear increase with respect to Pa. At higher partial pressures, the 1 plus term becomes small. So when the 1 plus term becomes small, we can ignore the 1 plus term. And what we have is Ka-Pa divided by Ka-Pa, which essentially cancels out. So theta becomes a constant value out here. So that is why it plateaus out at higher partial pressures. So if a species follows the Langmuir isotherm, then what will happen is that a theta versus partial pressure plot will look like this, first increasing and then flattening out. Now let us look at what happens to the experimental data. Now, if I carry out experiments and measure the surface coverage, which is theta versus partial pressure, then instead of getting only one type of graph, I actually end up getting 5 types. And these are the 5 possibilities. This is one. This is called type 1. Here you see it increases, but instead of becoming flat, there is again an increase in this kind of a curvature. Then we have a type 3 type where the curvature is completely different right from the bottom. Then we have a type 4 where it goes up, flattens out, then again increases and flattens out. Type 5 is almost close to type 4, but the nature is slightly different. So when we are looking at in these figures, if you're looking at the red arrows essentially, I've written it out here also, it indicate adsorption, while the blue lines denote desorption. So for type 1, type 2, and type 3, you will see there is no hysteresis. If you remember, hysteresis you might have studied when we are talking about magnetism. And you had seen that when you are trying to magnetize a material, the plot that you get, and when you demagnetize it, if the curves do not fall exactly on top of each other, we say there is hysteresis. The same thing happens out here, that this is the adsorption curve. You desorb it. That means first you're adsorbing the molecule at low pressures, then you increase the pressure and you desorb the molecule. And if the graph follows this particular, if you dissolve the molecules means your pressure goes down and hence the molecules come out, then what happens is this is the curve that you follow again. If the two curves are on top of each other, then we cannot see it independently. So the backward movement or whatever, the desorption is shown by the blue arrows. This happens both in type 1, type 2, and type 3. All 3 of them, the adsorption and the desorption curves are on top of each other. Whereas in type 4 and type 5, you will see that there is a hysteresis. So the way the adsorption happens is different from the way the desorption happens. So we take different kinds of surfaces and you adsorb different kinds of gases. And you find out what is the theta versus partial pressure of that for that particular combination. And once you plot it, you will see that there are different possibilities that come up. which essentially tells us that all of these adsorption processes are not happening because of the same kind of mechanism. For example, the first one that is out here, that there's a linear increase and then there is a flattening. This is the type 1 type, which fits the Langmuir isotherm and over the whole range. And an example of something like this is activated carbon getting adsorbed, where the surface area is equal to 1000 meters square per gram, and it has very narrow pores. When we have very narrow pores, we do see this kind of behavior. Before I go into describing the others, I would like to also mention that at low partial pressures, you will see, let me get a pen out here. At low partial pressures out here, you will see there is a linearity. The curves are all linear at this kind of a low partial pressure. Here, the partial pressure is low. In this case, also at low partial pressures. And in this case too, at low partial pressure, each of these curves are linear. That means theta is equal to Ka into Pa. Or if I write theta in terms of concentration of adsorbed species, multiply the total, divided by the total concentration of the sites which are there, that means CAS is equal to Ka into Ct into Pa. This is what happens at low values of partial pressure. But at higher values, the curvature changes. So the first type essentially follows the Langmuir isotherm. The second type is seen to this kind of curve when we see and we try to understand which is the type of adsorbent and adsorbate which follows this. You will see that this type of curves is seen in the case of non-porous solids. If the porosity of the solids is not there, if the solids are non-porous, then the adsorption curve will look like a type 2 kind of adsorption. Now let us look at type 3. When does this kind of a curve happen? This type of curve happens in porous solids. So type 1 is porous solid, type 3 is also porous solid. With cohesive forces between the adsorbed molecule being greater than the adhesive forces between the adsorbent and adsorbed molecule. So what does it mean? Suppose we have a surface and there's absorption happening here, and there's adsorption happening here, and there's another adsorption happening here. So they are saying that the forces between these two species, the cohesive forces between these two, cohesive forces essentially always talk about forces between the same type of molecules. Okay, so the cohesive forces between these two species is more than the force between the adsorbent and the adsorbate. That means between the surface and the molecule which is sitting on top. When this happens is greater, then the kind of curve that we get is what we see in a type 3. And the example is water vapor on graphite. Graphite is a type of carbon. And when you have water vapor absorbing on carbon, the kind of curve that you get for theta versus partial pressure is a type 3 kind of curve. Now let us look at the type 4. When does type 4 happen? Type 4 is also for porous solids. Type 4 is also for porous solids, but when we have staged adsorption. Staged adsorption means that first monolayer and then build up of other layers. So what does it mean? Suppose there are 5 sites out here. 1 site, 2 sites, 3, 4, 5. That completes my monolayer. So a second one will not start happening till all of this 5 is covered. First, one layer happens and then the next layer happens. So the build-up or the adsorption is layer by layer. So when we have an adsorption like this in a porous solid, the kind of graph that or the plot that we get for coverage versus partial pressure is like the type 4. And because the desorption is happening from, so when you have something like this, say for example, and then there are curves like this. This is my adsorption. And then when the desorption happens, how will it happen? From the top first. So, and then the next layer and then the third layer. And that is why probably there's a hysteresis between the adsorption and the desorption process. Last one is the type 5 type, which is also happens in porous solids, with the adhesive force between the adsorbate and adsorbed molecule being greater than the cohesive force between the adsorbate molecules. So whatever we had seen, it is just the opposite of type 3. So this is what we have. When we have an adsorption, this bond which is there, the force which is there, that is greater than the force between two molecules, similar molecules, which are side by side. So this is more than this one. In that case, we have a type 5 kind of curve in the case of coverage versus partial pressure. So only the first one fits the isotherm that we know, which is called Langmuir. The rest of these do not fit the Langmuir isotherm, or you can say they do fit it at very low pressures, but not at high pressures. Then what happens? Then we see that essentially we have to talk about other kinds of isotherms, which will describe the different types of behavior. And why does this happen? I told you about the shortcomings of the Langmuir isotherm, which is leading to the actually these type 3, type 2, type 4 and type 5 type of curves. So the first kind of
equation है ना
excuse me
मैम ये जो चार और हैं ग्राफ हैं तो उनके अलग इक्वेशंस से
that's
वो
what I'm
बने
going to
थे
tell you right now.
Okay, ma'am.
That is what I'm going to tell you right now. Not all of them, no one particular equation matches exactly the other one. Part of it might behave like something, part of it might behave like another one. So that's what I'm talking to you about, the other different types of isotherms. So the next isotherm that we talk about is called the Freundlich isotherm. You had learned about the Freundlich isotherm if you have done my environmental pollution course, or you must have learned about it in your also in your mass transfer classes. So let us see what is this Freundlich isotherm. The Freundlich equation of the isotherm is an empirical expression. Empirical means that we obtain this expression from experimental data, representing the isothermal variation of adsorption of a liquid or gas onto a surface of a solid material. Isothermal variation, because it's an isotherm, essentially the adsorption is happening at a constant temperature. And when we write out the expression for surface relating the surface coverage and partial pressure, so what we see is that this is the expression, that is theta is essentially equal to K, this is a constant, into PA, partial pressure of the gas, to the power 1 by N, where theta is my surface coverage, PA is the partial pressure of the adsorbate gas, K and N are empirical constants at a particular temperature. They will vary when the temperature changes, and N is greater than 1. N is usually greater than 1. It can also be written in terms of as X by M is equal to K into PA to the power 1 by N. So theta is what? Theta is my surface coverage, and X by M is essentially the mass of adsorbate by the mass of adsorbent. This is also another way of expressing my Freundlich isotherm. This is probably the way you had seen it when we had talked about some species from a water getting adsorbed on activated carbon, etc. This is the kind of expression that we had used. And when we are talking about a gas on a solid surface, we talk it in terms of theta. Now, what we do is we try to write out the linearized form of this kind of equation. So when you want to write it in the form of a straight line, you see, because there's a exponential term, you cannot, an exponent out here, you cannot directly write it as a straight line unless we take the logarithm of this. So we take an ln for left hand side and right hand side. And what do I get? Ln theta is equal to ln k plus 1 by n ln pa. So this essentially now becomes a straight line equation. So what is my straight line equation? Y is equal to mx m, and this is my x, and this is my c. So you can plot ln theta versus ln pa, and you should get a straight line with ln k being your intercept and 1 by n being my the slope. Or if I want to linearize this expression, I write ln x by m is equal to ln k plus 1 by n ln pa. So these are the two ways in which, so if I plot the ln versus values, and I see that when I plot ln theta versus ln pa, I get a straight line. I can say that my equation does represent the Freundlich isotherm. So some of the changes that we have seen in your Freundlich isotherm is that there's a logarithmic change of adsorption enthalpy with surface coverage. So last time when we talked about Langmuir isotherm, we had said no matter what the surface coverage is, your heat of adsorption remains constant. So this is my heat of adsorption, which remains constant in the case of Langmuir. But in the case of a Freundlich isotherm, you see that this does not remain constant and there is a drop in the heat of adsorption. And there's what kind of a change? This is a logarithmic change. That in terms of log change, there is that in terms of logarithmic values, there's a drop in the heat of adsorption with increase in surface coverage. That means we are here assuming that my surface is not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous. Some parts of the, some sites on the surface might have a different energy from the other sites. So here we have seen that it fits experimental data over a reasonable range of partial pressure or concentration. And what kind of species are seen to follow this kind of, let me get my pointer back. We have seen that when we adsorb hydrogen on the surface of tungsten or sulfur dioxide on the surface of an activated carbon, the behavior is such that it follows the Freundlich isotherm. But is everything fantastic about the Freundlich isotherm? Does it have no problems? No, that is also not true. Freundlich isotherm does have some issues, and that we are writing in terms of the limitations. So the limitations of Freundlich isotherm are that it fails at high pressure. So up to reasonable amount of partial pressure it works, but then it fails at high pressure because then we start getting theta values which are greater than 1. That means surface coverage is greater than 1 doesn't make too much of sense. So it does not give us very accurate values for very high partial pressures. And cannot be easily extended to more than one component. Like if you think about the assignment I had just told you, that I had said that the Langmuir isotherm for a single adsorbed species is theta is equal to Ka-Pa divided by 1 plus Ka-Pa. And if I increase the number of species which are getting adsorbed, suppose there are 3 species, then we have summation theta I is equal to summation Ki theta I, Ki Pi Pi divided by 1 plus summation Ki Pi. So we can easily extend it from one species to multiple species. But in the case of Freundlich isotherm, it is not very easy to change this expression from one single species, that means only the partial pressure of A, to the partial pressure of B and C if it's also getting adsorbed. That is the shortcoming of the Freundlich isotherm. The next type of isotherm, there could be others also, but for this particular course, I'll only do 4 with you. That means we talked about Langmuir, we discussed Freundlich, we'll talk about Temkin, and we'll do 1 more after this. So what is Temkin isotherm? Temkin isotherm is usually used for systems with heterogeneous surface energy. So just like the Freundlich isotherm, here also we are assuming that the energy of the different active sites on the surface are not the same. The corners, the edges, the center might have different energies. This isotherm takes into account the effect of indirect adsorbate interactions on the adsorption process. That means the 2 species which interact with each other after getting adsorbed. In the case of Langmuir, we had said they do not interact with each other at all. One is getting adsorbed, it has got no effect on the other one. But in reality, think about it. There is an electron cloud over each of these species. Obviously, there's going to be some interaction. And this Temkin isotherm essentially considers that. And mathematically, Temkin gave this expression for a relationship between surface coverage and partial pressure. So what is this expression? Theta is equal to K1 ln of K2 into partial pressure of A, where theta is my surface coverage, Pa is the partial pressure of the adsorbate gas, and K1 and K2 are the adsorption constants. These are different adsorption constants. So the nature is slightly different. After this, what we try to do, that like we have done in other cases, that we try to linearize it. So when you linearize it, we do not take an ln or anything, we just break this up. So what do I have? Theta is equal to K1 ln K2, plus K1 ln PA. So what happens out here, that the term after the equation, that is K1 ln K2, these are all constant terms. So we can call this C, this is my Y, and this is my M, and ln PA is my X. So in order to get a straight line, if I plot my theta versus ln PA, and if I get a straight line, then I say that, okay, this equation is now following the Temkin isotherm. And and from the intercept, I can get, from the slope, I can get the value of K1. And after knowing the value of K1 from the intercept value, I can find out the value of K2. Again, unlike the Langmuir isotherm and the the Freundlich isotherm, the behavior of the Temkin isotherm, the heat of adsorption for the Temkin isotherm is different. Similar to the Freundlich isotherm, here also there is a change in the heat of adsorption with coverage. But what is the change like? Here there is a linear decrease. In the case of Freundlich isotherm, there was a logarithmic change. Here there's a linear decrease in the of heat of adsorption with increase in surface coverage. And this is due to the adsorbent interactions, the second part that I had said out here. And so delta HA is delta HAO into 1 minus alpha into theta. Alpha is a constant. So this is how it decreases. If I plot this, that means delta HA versus theta, I will get a plot like this. This is my Temkin. I've always drawn the Langmuir along with it just to show you that Langmuir is straight, but the other two drop. So if I want to draw even the Freundlich out here, the Freundlich will look like this. So there is a drop here and here both, but the nature of the drop is different. What are the limitations of the Temkin isotherm? The limitations of the Temkin isotherm is that the limiting value of theta is not predicted correctly. That means the maximum value of theta that we can get is not predicted very accurately, and it cannot handle more than one component. Just like the Freundlich also, we had a problem that if there is more than one species getting adsorbed, if you're just doing an adsorption experiment, then we are taking one gas and trying to adsorb it on one surface, then we can get species which follow the Temkin isotherm. But suppose we are using it for a reaction where there could be two species getting adsorbed, then we might have an issue when we're talking about the Temkin isotherm. And the last kind of isotherm that we're going to talk about, probably I'll not finish it today, we'll continue with it in tomorrow's class. I'll finish it up in the tutorial, and then we will continue solving the problems. So what we have is we have an isotherm which is known as the BET isotherm. BET stands for Brunner, Emmett, and Teller. These three people worked on it to finally formalize this isotherm. So Brunner, Emmett, and Teller isotherm, they derived the first isotherm for multi-layer adsorption. They are the ones that are talking about multi-layer adsorption. Nobody else has talked about multi-layer adsorption before this. The theory of multi-layer adsorption assumes that physisorption results in the formation of multi-layer adsorption. If you remember the differences between physisorption and chemisorption, you might recall that chemisorption was the maximum was up to monolayer, whereas physisorption can happen multi-layer. So this is where the BET isotherm becomes important. After the formation of the monolayer, the adsorption process can continue with the formation of multi-layer involving the second layer, third layer, and so on. This was a type 4 kind of behavior that we see. The heat of adsorption of additional layers equals to the latent heat of condensation. So first we have the heat of adsorption of the first layer. When we talk about the second, third, fourth layer, which is getting, say, for example, this is my first layer. Let me do a very quick job of saying that this is my first layer adsorption. This is my heat of adsorption involved. And when we have a second layer getting adsorbed on top of it, or we have a third layer, the heat of adsorption which is involved out here, second and third layer, is equal to the latent heat of condensation. Because it is almost like, because I had told you that physisorption is like the process of condensation, that is just like a Water vapor condenses on a cold surface. Similarly, these kind of gases will start condensing layer by layer on the surface. The theory also assumes that the solid surface has uniform sites of adsorption and that adsorption at one site does not affect the adsorption at neighboring sites. This is kind of similar to what we had seen in the case of Langmuir isotherm, that the sites are uniform and the adsorption of one site does not influence the other one. And the equation for BET is given as partial pressure of A divided by V into PO minus PA is equal to 1 by Vm into C plus C minus 1 by Vm into C PA by PO. There is another, PA obviously is the partial pressure of the gas which is getting absorbed. PO, which we have not seen before, is the saturation vapor pressure of this gas at that particular temperature. These are all isotherms, so my temperature is constant. So at saturation vapor pressure at that particular temperature of that gas is my value of PO. C is a constant for a particular system and temperature. C is constant for a particular system and temperature. Vm is the volume of the gas adsorbed at monolayer. V is the volume of the gas adsorbed at any partial pressure PA. This is my experimental values that I'll get. We know the partial pressure and we can measure what is the volume of the gas which is adsorbed. So if you plot, this is like again a linear plot. So this term, the entire term on the left hand side of the equal to sign is my Y. If this is plotted versus PA by PO, which is my X, then I will get C minus 1 by Vm by C as my slope and 1 by Vmc as my intercept. Okay. This is my slope and this is my intercept. BET equation fits all known adsorption isotherms for various types of solids reasonably well. So BET is actually a very useful isotherm because it kind of at different conditions, it seems to follow all kinds of these type 1 to type 4, the 5 that I had shown you earlier. BET isotherms work best in the PA by P naught ratio of 0.05 to 0.35. When we do examples, when I do mathematical examples, you will see that this is true. That when this ratio of PA by P naught is in the range of 0.05 to 0.35, that is when we get a nice straight line using the BET equation. For other cases, there might be a slight curvature that we will see when we see actual real examples. The most significant contribution of BET isotherm is that it provides a means of accurate determination of the surface area of a solid. So these types of things I'm talking about, that the surface area of a catalyst surface is say 500 meters square per gram or 300 meters square per gram. How do I determine that? I determine that by using the BET isotherm. How we do that? We will teach you later when we talk about the chapter on solid catalysts. So this is about the BET isotherm. I will start from here in the next class, and that is tomorrow. And we will continue with an example out there, and then we will continue with the rest of the tutorial. I'll stop sharing out here right now.